In 1988, Formula One was simple. Alain Prost, Ayrton Senna, and McLaren Honda. Two superb drivers and one dominating car, winning 15 out of 16 races, Senna edging Prost for the World Championship. Last year also saw the end of turbocharging in Formula One, and after 11 years, the song of normally aspirated engines heralds a new era when things will be wild again. Wild again. Exotic Rio de Janeiro, home of the samba. The beaches at Ipanema and Copacabana. Sugarloaf Mountain dominating the harbor. And high above it all, the outstretched arms of Christ the Redeemer atop Corcovado. Bon dia y feliz Pascua, everyone. Hello and happy Easter. I'm Bob Varsha, welcoming you to sunny and very warm Rio for the first event of what promises to be the most exciting year of Formula One auto racing ever here on ESPN. The turbochargers are gone, and if you've never heard the sound of 26 normally aspirated Formula One engines in full song, stick around because they are wonderful. And with us to call the action of the Grand Prix of Brazil this year, David Hobbs, our old friend. Much has changed in Formula One. New faces, new engines, new cars, but one very familiar helmet up front.
Well, that's certainly right, Bob. The old yellow helmet of Ayrton Senna sits on the pole here again. He got 13 last year, and he's getting 89 off to a great start in his brand new Honda McLaren. But the old 1-2 punch is gone. Alain Prost is back in fifth spot, and between them are two Renault engine cars of Patrese and Boutsen, and Berger's in there in his Ferrari. There's a lot of new cars, new tires, new teams, and new drivers. But one thing that really is changing this year, and it's going to have a big impact on today's race in particular, I think, is that the tire wars are back. Pirelli have rejoined the fray, and so Goodyear and Pirelli are both making tires that are very, very marginal because they've got to be a lot quicker. Goodyear had no competition the last 2 years, and they had basically a set tire. Different now, and with this terrific heat here and these long fast corners at Rio, some people, we're told, may have to stop as many as 3 times in this race. That could play into the hands of our fifth place man Alain Prost, but whatever, it's going to mean a lot of action down in the old pit lane.
And down in the old pit lane once again this year will be John Bisignano, although we did have to go looking for John to convince him to join us here in Rio.
This Easter weekend is one of the busiest times on the Colorado slopes. This mountain is absolutely packed with holiday skiers. Well, I live here, and I love to ski, but there's one other thing I'd rather be doing this weekend. For that, I've got to head south. Man, that was definitely the longest run I've ever made, and certainly the most difficult, especially when I ran out of snow halfway through New Mexico. But it was worth it, just to be able to say to you, welcome to Rio and the Grand Prix of Brazil, brought to you on ESPN. This is round 1 of the 1989 Formula One Grand Prix World Championship, and we'll all be back after these commercial messages. Stay with us.
In a hot and steamy Autodromo Nelson Piquet in Rio de Janeiro, we're getting close to the start of the Grand Prix of Brazil, and here is the way the drivers will line up. On the pole for an incredible 30th time in only 79 Grand Prix starts, the 1988 world champion Ayrton Senna of Brazil for McLaren Honda. Next door, Riccardo Patrese of Italy makes his record-breaking 177th career start for Williams Renault. In row 2, Gerhard Berger of Austria debuts the new Ferrari alongside Belgium's Thierry Boutsen, making his first start for Williams. Row 3 will have two-time world champion Alain Prost of France for McLaren Honda, next to Nigel Mansell of Great Britain making his Ferrari debut. Row 4 will be Ivan Capelli of Italy and the 1988 March Judd, alongside Derek Warwick of Great Britain in a brand new USF&G Arrows Ford. Row 5 will have Nelson Piquet driving with a broken rib for Lotus Judd, alongside rookie Johnny Herbert of Great Britain in the Benetton. Row 6, Alessandro Nannini of Italy for Benetton and Mauricio Gugelmin of Brazil for March. Row 7 will be all Brabhams, Martin Brundle of Great Britain and Stefano Modena of Italy. Row 8, Andrea De Cesaris of Italy for Dallara and Pierluigi Martini, also of Italy for Minardi. Row 9, Christian Danner returns to Formula One for Germany and Real. Dr. Jonathan Palmer of Great Britain has the Tyrrell at his elbow. Row 10 will be Nicola Larini and Michele Alboreto, both of Italy. Larini for Osella, Alboreto in the Tyrrell. Row 11, Satoru Nakajima, the only Japanese driver in the field in the Lotus. Olivier Griard, another rookie from France in Olivier. Row 12 will be Luis Sala of Spain in the Minardi. Eddie Cheever having a troubled weekend in the Arrows. Row 13 will be Bernd Schneider of Germany in the Zaxpeed, and next to him Philippe Alliot of France in the Lola Lamborghini with Chrysler backing. The circuit here at the Autodromo Nelson Piquet offers a real challenge to these Formula One drivers. David, how about taking us for a lap?
There you see a map of this 11-turn circuit just south of Rio de Janeiro, just behind the Barra Beach on the river estuary. Very flat, but very, very bumpy as well, as you can see as we join. Riccardo Patrese going down the pit straight here. Comes out of second, third, fourth, up to fifth, and then finally 6 gears. He approaches turn 1. A very fast corner down to fifth as he swings through there, using up all the road today. This is one of Riccardo Patrese's fastest laps of the weekend. Back down to fourth, the Carlos Pache curve. This, as you can see, is a long, long double apex left-hander. A real little neck stretcher, that one. Up to fourth, fifth, and sixth as he flicks through the Suspiro, this quick left. Now he's down to fourth with his right-hand sweep. Coming up to the north curve, this is just about a lap here. Looks like Ivan Capelli in one of the March cars. Down to second, he accelerates past there and down onto the main back chute. 180 miles an hour down here as he finally gets into 6th gear. Past a huge crowded grandstand, thousands of Brazilians here having a great time today as they watch Ayrton Senna. Up to about 180 miles an hour, onto the brake, down to fifth. A long, long, very, very fast left-hand corner. You can see the rev count there, right up to almost maximum revs in 5th gear, just 1 gear off top. Holds 5th gear through this entire sweeping complex, comes down to the lake turn, down to 4th. Back on the power there, you can see him really struggling that car, just gets up on the curve there, but no sweat for Riccardo. Down to the 90, down to 4th this corner, accelerates hard out of there, just gets to the curve again. Now he's coming to Victory Loop. This is the corner that leads onto the start finish straight down to 2nd gear, accelerates hard out of here, and crosses the stripe to complete what is the second fastest qualifying lap here this weekend.
It is a steaming day here in Rio. The temperature right now 102 degrees and going up. The humidity said to be 40%, but it feels like a lot more drippy than that. The skies are clear, the wind is light but chopping across both straightaways. The forecast for clear and much hotter as the day goes on. We've begun our warm-up laps, and we'll be back for John Bizignano's latest update on the condition of all the teams when we return to Rio in a moment. Pole sitter Ayrton Senna leads the field on the first of 61 laps of the race course. John Bizignano is standing by with an update.
Bob, the latest information just hot off the grid, literally, is that Ayrton Senna, everything with his car is perfectly okay. The Lamprost has had handling problems all weekend long and in testing, but during this morning warm-up, they improved that car considerably in its handling characteristics, and he was actually number 1 in the morning warm-up. He has won here many times. Look for him to hold on to possibly that next win here this year. Ferrari, they are carrying more fuel than they ever have in their life. They won't tell us how much, but it's going to be a very heavy car in the beginning of the race. Gerhard Berger had electrical problems, the same problems that have been testing problems for them ever since they built this particular car, the 640. Benetton, A-OK, they are using 1988 cars here. Lotus with the Nelson Piquet car, it has had a motor problem. They say it's fixed.
Thank you very much, John. Once again this year, we'll be doing our Pick 6 feature here on ESPN, in which we ask all of our commentators to put their credibility right out there on the line. And with perfect courage, I'm going to turn it over to you, David. Who do you see winning today?
Well, I just have to say that I think Alan Prost is the most likely winner here today. He really is, because this is going to be a tyre race, and Alan Prost is tremendous on tyres, even though he's starting back in the pack. Next, one has to say Ayrton Senna because of his home crowd.
Pick it up.
Then Patrese possibly might come third in this race with the new Renault engine car. Then I'm going for Martin Brundle, Gugelmin, also another Brazilian, and Derek Warwick should come in sixth.
Fair enough, and we'll be keeping score this year. More on that later. John, your pick 6.
Well, I can never agree with David, so I have to go with Ayrton Senna winning this particular race. Alain Prost certainly showed speed in the warm-up, and I have him for second. Boots in third. Brundle in the brand new Brabham. This car was only started to be designed last November in fourth. Derek Warwick in the USF&G Arrows in fifth. And Ivan Capelli grabbing that last championship point in sixth.
All right, thank you, John. You see the grid forming up, getting ready for the most exciting moment in motorsports, the standing start. Quickly, my picks: Alain Prost to win, Ayrton Senna second, Martin Brundle, Ivan Capelli, Riccardo Patrese, and Alessandro Nannini to pick up that 6th point.
This is the time that the guys on the front go, of course, are particularly nervous, waiting for those last cars to fill in. There we see Mauricio Gugelmin, a Brazilian. As you can see, the cars here actually go round the last corner on the grid.
Alio, the last car in the field, has come to a complete stop. The drivers will get a red light, and then sometime in the next 4 seconds, a green light. The RPMs come up. We're away. Berger tries the inside, but right now it's Patrese and Senna. Berger to the left. Senna swings wide to cut him off. And we have a spin. Berger spins after contact with Senna. Patrese is away clear. Berger is back on the racetrack. We expected action at the first turn, and we got it. There is your leader, Riccardo Patrese of Italy, driving the Williams.
Now, I thought that was a bit uncalled for by Senna to try and hold Berger out. But quite frankly, Berger has got very, very little chance of finishing this race, and he needn't panic quite so much at that stage. But it has let Patrase's teammate, Thierry Boutsen, through into second spot.
This is the 177th career Grand Prix start for this man, Riccardo Patrese, and that breaks the all-time record he shared with Graham Hill and Jacques Lafitte. Now here's another look at the start from one of the 2 in-car cameras being carried by the Williams cars. Berger is to your right.
Oil. Oop, there we go. And of course, in that melee, I think Ayrton Senna lost his front wing. So that pretty well puts Ayrton Senna out of the running for this race.
That camera was in Boutsen's car, and you saw the piece of debris that came off one of the 2 cars, either Senna's or Berger's, came back, slashed his right-hand mirror, and might have hit him in the face shield. You saw him reach up.
I think what happened to there was we see the car of Berger getting out of his car. He's got his front wings on, so that wing we saw flying must have been Ayrton Senna's.
Terrible moment there for Gerhard Berger in the brand new Ferrari number 640, a radical new car, but they didn't expect to have any kind of problem like this. The Ferrari's using a radical electromagnetic semi-automatic 7-speed gearbox has been causing them a lot of trouble, but a collision is something they had not counted on. Meanwhile, Patrese is your leader. Running in second spot is his teammate Thierry Boutsen. What a moment for Frank Williams and the Williams Renault team.
What a moment for Renault in their return to Grand Prix racing. This engine has the very advanced. There we see Ayrton Senna come in, lost the whole nose section of his car. Gosh, he must be fuming in front of his home crowd.
Let's get it down to John.
Let's go down to John Visigliano.
In view of this particular change, they're trying to do it extremely rapidly. The entire nose section was gone. Both wings, and the front of the nose was laid up on top of the cockpit, actually almost reaching the end of the windscreen where Ayrton Senna is sitting. I can look right into his eyes. He is absolutely furious. He's trying to give directions to Ron Dennis, the team manager. They are trying to change this ring very quickly. They knew he was coming in. They were ready for him.
John, I have to break in here. There's a Mercedes pace car out on the track, and the drivers have not been warned. There are no flags. There's been no red lights. For some reason or other, there's a pace car on the track as they're racing.
And now he has pulled off. He is up against the guardrail. We're using a Brazilian television feed, so we're not able to show you the picture unless they do. You see the work continuing on Ayrton Senna's car after his collision with Gerhard Berger in the Ferrari, but the race continues unabated. Very close moment there. There was a safety vehicle on the course, and the drivers were not warned. We are still under green flag conditions. The Williams of Riccardo Patrese leads. In second place is his teammate Thierry Boutsen. In third place is Nigel Mansell in the Ferrari. Alain Prost is fourth. Fifth, Ivan Capelli in a March. Sixth, Derek Warwick in the USF&G Arrows.
Seventh is the 2 Benetton cars of Capelli and Johnny Herbert. Johnny Herbert, his first ever Grand Prix start, has been really hot all weekend.
Get back
He's
down,
running
John,
very strongly now in the race.
Let's go back to John Visigliano in the pits.
Running by, they had the nose completely back on the McLaren. They took it back off. They must now change the crash box. The crash box is what protects the driver's legs. Therefore, there must have been a pedal sticking somewhere inside that particular crash box. So right now, we are over 1 minute, 2 minutes, just into 2 minutes on this particular pit stop. Gerhard Berger walked by us. Of course, he was not in a mood to talk to anybody, so the Ferrari's definitely out. And here comes the bloody Mercedes pace car, whatever it is. It was the, looking inside, it has like a fire-type arrangement inside of it with the fire bottles and so forth, but they were certainly not in the right position when this race started. Back to you.
Thanks, John. Meanwhile, we saw another replay of the incident between Gerhard Berger and Ayrton Senna as we watched the leader, Riccardo Patrese, in the Williams. David, whose fault?
Well, Ayrton Senna tried to keep Berger out, and he really just pushed his luck a little bit too much, and Berger's not the sort of guy to be pushed around. He maintained his line. He didn't want to go onto the grass too much, and Senna has paid the penalty of rough driving. And, of course, it was rather pointless because, personally, I don't think the Ferrari of Berger would have finished, nor is this one that's running in third spot of Nigel's got much of a chance, not going on their practice fortunes, which have been absolutely dismal this weekend.
They've had transmission problems. They've had problems with their 12-cylinder engines, which they admit are down on power to the more powerful machines ahead of them, particularly the Williams Renault and the McLaren Hondas. But right now, Nigel Mansell, who says he always wanted to drive for Ferrari, runs in second position.
He got around Boutsen there. Now he's up in the second spot, and he's making ground on Patrese, but again, if I was those two guys, I wouldn't be panicking too much about it. Not on the previous 2 days' performance, anyway.
We expected things to be wild again, and they certainly are. Nigel Mansell, I don't think, has finished a complete practice or qualifying session because of problems with this Ferrari. But right now, on the long 2,000-foot straightaway here at the Autodromo Nelson Piquet in Brazil, Mansell looks just fine.
Well, he told me very proudly this morning that on his warm-up lap, as you saw, he only did half a lap this morning. He said, well, I did at least get out the pit lane, and I did have reverse, so I could have reversed back in, but he was a bit despondent at lunchtime today.
A view from high overhead as Ayrton Senna is back on track in his McLaren. And recall Japan last October when Senna fell back in the field, but with the title on the line, he came ripping back through to win the race. I think it's a little bit unlikely today, but there are some 95,000 of his countrymen on hand, and Senna will want to do well. Riccardo Patrese remaining your leader. Nigel Mansell running second. Ferrari Terry Boutsen is third for a Williams. We'll be back to Rio de Janeiro in a moment. Back in Rio at the Formula One Grand Prix of Brazil, where you're watching your leader, Riccardo Patrese, and behind him, Nigel Mansell in what everybody thought would be a Ferrari that could not go the distance, but he is having none of it, and he is challenging. It is a new game in Formula One this year. We'll tell you a little bit more about it. Among the rules changes we're seeing this year, no turbochargers, a 3.5-liter maximum size on the engine, no fuel limit, except that fuel weighs about 6 pounds per U.S. gallon. You don't want to carry any more than you need to. The race distance reduced from 320 kilometers to 305. Pre-qualifying for the less successful teams or the new teams this year. Friday mornings at 8 a.m., which has caused some surprises already. 2 in-car cameras will be carried. All 8 of the top teams will share in-car cameras this year. And, of course, the tire war between Pirelli and Goodyear.
Well, having mentioned that tire war brings us to a pretty important point here, and that is that Riccardo Patrese at this stage must not rise to the bait and try and hold Nigel Mansell off too long, because I'm still convinced, and I'm sure that Patrese is also, that Nigel will not finish this race. However, if he can get away with 1 tire stop as opposed to 2, which everybody at the moment is scheduled to have, that will make a tremendous difference to his race performance, which is why I put Prost as the winner, because I think he will get away with 1. And the one thing that they can do is to try and be very careful with their tires early on in the race. If they can get beyond about the 20-lap stage, you know they're only going to make 1 stop. So the thing to do here on Patrese is not to really drive that car into the ground and duff his tires up.
On the long back straightaway, reaching speeds of some 175 miles an hour, Patrese leads Mansell by barely a second. Another rule that we didn't mention is that the cars are lighter this year. They're allowed to get down to about 500 kilos, say about 1,100 pounds, but normally aspirated cars often have problems getting down to that weight limit. Ferrari in particular is known for building heavy race cars, and that will cause tire problems as well.
Well, their 12-cylinder engine is a bit on the heavy side, and I'm sure their automatic transmission is also a little bit on the heavy side. But most of the new cars are pretty close to the weight, and which is amazing, really, because it is only 500 kilograms. It's awfully light.
Riccardo Patrese remains your leader. Meanwhile, further back, you watch a McLaren making a pass there. I believe that was Senna carving his way back through the field again, but he is way back. Meanwhile, here is the action on the point. Riccardo Patrese in the blue, white, and yellow Williams. Right behind him, Nigel Mansell. Keep in mind that in 1988, these two men were teammates at Williams. They know each other very well.
And you can see what I mean about tire wear. See the way these corners go on and on and on. I mean, those tires really take some stick going through these long corners, especially on a day like today. The track temperature's probably up around about the 140 to 150 degree mark, so the tires get a real pasting here.
Riccardo Patrese, his 177th start. A reporter asked him whether or not, in all that time with only 2 victories in Grand Prix racing, whether he had perhaps lost his hunger to win. Said Riccardo, no, only race drivers with a lot of victories lose the hunger to win. That's not my problem.
I don't think that problem applies to Ayrton Senna, Alain Prost, or, of course, to Mario Andretti. He doesn't seem to have lost his desire to win races either. He's been at it a lot longer than Riccardo.
Don't forget Nigel Mansell dogging Riccardo Patrese, car number 6 for Frank Williams Grand Prix Engineering. Williams, of course, the owner of this car, injured in a serious automobile accident a couple of years ago, confined to a wheelchair, but he still makes the races, and he is still as sharp as ever.
These two putting on a pretty tremendous display at the front of the field here, just half a second between them. Nigel, of course, may be getting very confident, having done 7 laps, which is about 6 more than he's managed to do the rest of the weekend in one go. And he may be feeling his oats and feel that perhaps the car will go the distance. And so he, too, is in the tire-preserving mode.
Let's reset the top 10 to keep you updated on what's happening behind the lead battle you're watching here. There you see some of the cars further back. Behind Patrese and Mansell, Alain Prost up to 3rd position, 5 seconds behind the lead battle. 4th is Ivan Capelli in the March. 5th, Derek Warwick in the Arrows. 6th, Alessandro Nannini for Benetton, followed by his teammate Johnny Herbert in 7th. 8th is Mauricio Gugelmin of Brazil in the March. 9th, Martin Brundle in the Brabham, making their comeback after a year's absence. And 10th, Andrea De Cesaris in the Dallara.
Ayrton Senna goes round Jonathan Palmer in one of the Tyrrells. This is last year's car. Has some slight modifications to the rear suspension. And he and his new teammate, Michele Alboreto, didn't qualify very, very well, but they're looking forward to their new car and hoping for much better things in the races to come.
A number of teams have brought updated cars here to Brazil, and others, on the other hand, have brand new machines with updated engines.
Of course, if you're looking at one of the cars, it's a new car, a new Williams, also, of course, with a brand new Renault 3.5-litre normally aspirated engine. The car that Thierry Boutsen was driving and that dropped out while we were in one of those commercial breaks was, in fact, an old car because he had a horrendous crash here. There we see Ayrton Senna going past Michele Alboreto, which obviously would imply to me that Alboreto is leaving Jonathan Palmer. Whistles by him there. Now about to take off one of the Lotuses, probably Nakajima.
Back up on the point, Riccardo Patrese continues to lead Nigel Mansell as the Grand Prix of Brazil continues here on ESPN, and we'll be back for more of the action in a moment. There's a special coming your way shortly on ESPN as Robbie Knievel, son of legendary motorcycle daredevil Evel Knievel, attempts to jump the fountains at Caesars Palace Hotel in Las Vegas Friday, April 14th. Robbie will be attempting to avenge his father's 1967 crash. Nobody else has ever made this jump. This event will be coming to you as a live pay-per-view special, so contact your local cable system operator to order the spectacular event, April 14th. Meanwhile, at the Grand Prix of Brazil, you're watching leader Riccardo Patrese, who has held the lead from the green light when we had a collision between Ayrton Senna of Brazil and Gerhard Berger in the Ferrari. Thierry Boutsen was also involved as some debris came out of that crash. Berger and Boutsen are now out of the race. Riccardo Patrese Patrese remains on point. Close behind him, though, the blood-red Ferrari of Englishman Nigel Mansell.
And both these drivers are driving with considerable restraint. I just put a watch on Patrese last lap, and he was only doing 36s, which is well within the capability of that car, so he's obviously going for a tire-saving race.
Let's go down to John Visignano in the pits.
Well, Nelson Piquet has been in the pits for 2 minutes now. It's a very sad day for the 95,000 plus Brazilian fans here, with both of their drivers spending more times in the pits than on the track. We need to clarify one thing, is that Senna has come in twice. So if you see him much higher on the track than he was earlier, his first pit stop was 3:01. That's 3 minutes, 1 second, and then he went back out on the track. The next lap, he came in, and he was in here for 1 minute, 32 seconds, and rejoined what might look higher up, but actually he was very, very far back. Nelson Piquet now at 2 minutes, 36 seconds. The engine is misfiring terribly, and we also have Johnny Herbert in the Benetton coming in right behind him. It looks like a routine tire stop, very quick. Cars back down. They're moving the Lotus boys out of the way. Johnny Herbert makes what has been the first official tire stop here with his Goodyear tires, and we also had Mr. Brundle in the pits with a very bad smoking engine. So the heat of Brazil is a problem. They are rolling Nelson Piquet into the garage. Back to you.
Well, attrition has always been the story of the Brazilian Grand Prix, and there you see three-time world champion Nelson Piquet being rolled off. Tough day for Brazil.
Well, there were only 9 finishes last year, and quite frankly, I'm not looking there to be a lot more this year. The crowd just in front of the box here just went absolutely berserk as when Herbert pulled in the pits. That allowed Mauricio Gugelmin, the one remaining Brazilian in the race, to pick up another spot, and he's now running in, he must be running in 7th spot.
7th spot shown on the Longines Olivetti monitors. Ricardo Patrese remains the leader. Mansell, as you see, barely a second behind. And just coming into the back of your picture, Alain Prost of France running in the number 2 spot. Give him a call. Prost is very quietly moving up on the leaders.
Absolutely. That old familiar sign, old Nigel must be looking in his mirrors and saying, oh, God, here he is again, you know. I mean, there's no shaking the guy off. He's like some sort of spectre hanging over them.
Alain Prost has had a tough weekend. He was held up at the airport earlier this week for 7 hours because of a bad visa. There you see Gerhard Berger standing on the sidelines in street clothes. He barely completed 2 laps of this race after his collision with Senna. After sitting in the airport for 7 hours, when he first arrived in Brazil, Alain Prost went to his hotel, and last night when he was looking for a good night's sleep, there was a bomb scare phoned in. The entire Intercontinental Hotel in Brazil was emptied of its residents, and they actually found something, although there were no explosives involved. So it's been a tough weekend for Alain Prost. He'd like nothing better than to score his record 36th Formula One victory here in Brazil.
Well, now we're coming in, or about to come into this critical window of tire change. We've got 13 laps about to be completed, and 15 is about it. If you want to make 2 stops, you're going to have to go change sometime before, and there's the Marlboro team ready for Alain Prost. If he stops, you can bet your bottom dollar that everybody else is going to have to stop at least twice.
One tire stop by a leader has a tendency to make everyone change their tire thinking, because there is such a difference when you get on new tires in Formula One racing. The tires are going to be softer this year, although the Goodyear engineers tell us that they have tires that are the same as last year, at least for this first meeting with Pirelli. But we're sure the continuing tire war is going to lead to the need for better tires. Now, coming into the pits is Alain Prost. We expect he'll be down with John Visignano shortly. Take it away, John.
Alain Prost is coming into the pit lane. He almost lost it coming through that little chicane, trying to slow the car down. The McLaren boys have been practicing this all weekend long. Prost, the engine is moving very high. They're having no problem. They filled these radiators full of dry ice. And McLaren has made one very successful, one very quick pit stop. Alain Prost back out on the grid. That is really the second official stop just for tires. The reason they brought in Herbert first was because it was his very first Formula One pit stop, and they wanted no other cars around. They wanted it to make it as easy as possible for him. Back to you.
And we're watching Nelson Piquet walking around the garage, wondering what went wrong with his Camel Lotus Honda today. Meanwhile, the Bobbsey twins up front. Ricardo Patrese being chased by Nigel Mansell, but the gap has steadied.
Well, that's a bit of a turn-up for the books for Alan Prost to go in that soon, because he's now going to have to make at least one more stop, because that was a very, very early stop. 12 laps. I mean, obviously, you could construe that as meaning he's going to have to stop at laps 24, 36, and so on, which is going to mean a lot of stops between now and lap 61.
And we'll be back to show you them as they happen. You're watching the Grand Prix of Brazil on ESPN. We'll be back to the Autodromo Nelson Piquet in Rio de Janeiro after this. Watching ESPN coverage of the Grand Prix of Brazil from Rio de Janeiro. Bob Barcia, David Hobbs, and John Bisignano with you. And there is Mauricio Gugelmin, one of 3 Brazilians in the race, one of 2 that remain. Nelson Piquet is out. Ayrton Senna is several laps behind after a collision with Gerhard Berger at the start of the race. The McLaren well back in the field. Gugelmin in the march, doing quite well at the moment, running in about the 6th position. Here comes Nigel Mansell, trying Riccardo Patrese for the lead. And from inside, you see the Englishman take over.
Pretty impressive pass that on the outside, going into that very fast corner at the end of the straight. Obviously, a pretty brave move. Old Nigel had to put his outside wheels right onto or very close to the grass, kicking up the dust there. Patrese made a bit of a feint to try and keep him out, but old Nigel was having none of it. Pushed his way to the front, and this is absolutely remarkable. This car's now done 15 laps, which, as I say, is about 13 more than it's done all weekend. Here we see it again.
You see Patrese in the middle of the track. Mansell feints left and goes right, puts the wheels right over on the grass, and pulls it off under braking.
And there you see a great picture from inside Patrese's Renault engine to Williams as they go around that very, very fast, long left-hander, 5th gear, probably about 140, 145 miles an hour. Now catching up with Philippe Alliot in the LaRousse Calmels with the new Lamborghini V12 engine.
And one V12 passes another. And meanwhile, back in the 5th, this is Ivan Capelli in the march. Let's go down to John Bisignano.
The Benetton car has come in. They were all set up for him, but they've broken air hose just before he arrived in the pit. They have had to change that air hose, and that is why that left rear is taking so long. Also, back in the pits, once again, for stop number 3 is Ayrton Senna. Now, in the last stop, we saw his radiator smoking terribly. It sounds like the engine is all right. Can you imagine being set up, ready to greet your driver and have an air hose explosion just before he arrived at the pit? That's what Benetton just got finished with. And right behind, we also have the Ferrari coming in, and we also have the other Lotus coming in. These Goodyear tires and the Pirelli tires are not holding up to the heat as well as the engineers thought, so there should be a lot of pit action. Back to you.
Thank you, John, and we're watching the leader, Nigel Mansell. I can tell you, it takes some getting used to looking at that familiar Union Jack on the helmet sitting inside that bright red race car.
Well, we've got 2. This is exciting. We've got 2 Union Jacks in the top 3, because Derek Warwick in the brand new Arrows has moved into 3rd spot. So he must be extremely excited. And Alan Prost has dropped back to 5th. Mauricio Gugelmin, who we see now, is in fact up to 4th spot. Neither him nor Derek Warwick have made tyre stops yet, but Gugelmin's teammate Capelli has, so obviously that leads you to assume that Gugelmin will be making one himself fairly shortly.
Updating the standings. In 1st place, Nigel Mansell. 2nd position is Riccardo Patrese in the Williams. 3rd place, Derek Warwick in the Arrows, as David mentioned. Ivan Capelli now 4th after his tire stop. Mauricio Gugelmin, the Brazilian, is 5th in the march. 6th is Alessandro Nannini in the Benetton. Alain Prost is in 7th position. 8th, Johnny Herbert. 9th, Eddie Cheever in the 2nd USF&G Arrows. And 10th, Christian Danner in the Real, moving up into the top 10.
Nigel Mansell's tyres, when we see close-up shots of them, don't look too bad from here. You can't see any strange black lines on them, which would indicate blistering or extremely high wear area. They look pretty good, and so do Patrese's. The Goodyear people told me before the race that the Patrese car was being pretty kind to the tyres, so maybe these 2 guys are really going to go for one stop.
Well, while Nigel Mansell for Ferrari is having a great day, his teammate Gerhard Berger is not, and he's standing by now with John.
A very short Brazilian Grand Prix for you, Gerhard. What happened in that first corner?
3 cars together, there was not enough space. But I was inside and I was half meter in front, and I didn't expect Ayrton to turn in.
Well, our commentator said that you had the line. Our commentator said that you had the line into the corner. Do you believe that?
I believe I was half meter in front and I was inside. sometimes you have to give up, and if nobody of 3 drivers give up, so it's a normal situation.
Thank you very much, Gerhard. Gerhard Berger not willing to give up corner 1 along with 2 other drivers, and he is out of this Brazilian Grand Prix.
Meanwhile, back down in the pits, Derek Warwick has the arrows in, and it is a slow pit stop, already past 10 seconds as they check the radiators, having trouble with the rear wheels.
Ooh, he's not got his foot on the brake, you see. When they're always told to put their foot on the brake, and of course he hadn't got it, so the rear wheels are spinning. Mechanics hate that.
Meanwhile, back up front, Nigel Mansell continues to lead, and he's beginning to pull away from Ricardo Patrese, the yellow car at the back of your picture. Look how that V12 pulls on the straightaway. That was not expected. The Ferrari supposedly didn't have the power of the Renault.
Well, I think the power has come back this weekend. The odd lap they've done, like Berger, qualified very well. And I think the power is a thing of the past, but reliability is a major, major problem for them this year. But this tyre stock business is really becoming pretty outstanding. I mean, we're going to have to see if for instance, Prost is going to have to make 3 or 4 stops if he goes at the same rate as he's gone so far, not just 2. Certainly not 1.
Prost has moved up to 5th place. Make your top 5. Mansell, Patrese, Warwick. Well, of course, he will drop out after that long pit stop. Moving up Gugelmin to 3rd position. Prost will now be 4th, I believe. 5th, Johnny Herbert. As you get a look at Gugelmin in the bright yellow and orange helmet and that aqua-colored March Judd. These are last year's cars updated to this year's specs. They're expecting a new car for the Grand Prix of San Marino in Imola.
And Gugelmin comes into the pits. The crowd here doing a lot of R-ing and arm waving as Gugelmin pulls in for his expected pit stop. But even at 18 laps, it still means he's going to have to make at least 2 more.
Meanwhile, we've got pit action. Here comes Gugelmin. We mentioned that these are the older Marches. They'll have new ones with very special Judd engines later on. Let's go down to John Visignano. Mauricio Gugelmin in and out. An average pit stop. A Formula One pit stop should happen in about 7 seconds. They're a little bit slower today, which I suppose is expected in the first race of the season.
And the heat, too. I mean, not only is everybody else moving slowly, but I'm sure the mechanics are finding it absolutely blisteringly hot on that concrete pit lane. And Nigel Mansell strides away in the lead of this race in a very, very impressive fashion.
The Englishman looking for his 14th career Grand Prix win, 34 years of age. Lives on the Isle of Man, a tax haven in the United Kingdom. Like many of these drivers who make multi-million-dollar salaries, they choose to live in places like Monte Carlo, Isle of Man, places like that where they don't pay a great amount of tax, if in fact any at all. Probably neighbors of yours, David.
Yeah. They don't pay any tax, but apartment rents are absolutely horrendous.
Okay, now we have the Ferrari coming into the pits. Nigel Mansell is pulling in for his tire stop at about the 1/3 mark of this race. So tire wear, very much a factor here in Rio. Meanwhile, from high overhead, we're watching one of the McLarens, and I would bet that that's Ayrton Senna, although he is at least 2 laps down by my unofficial count. The Ferrari team hard at work on Nigel Mansell's car. He goes back out 10 seconds into the stop.
Not such a good stop. There we see Senna about to pass Gugelmin. Of course, Gugelmin just out in the pits after his pit stop for tires. Derek Warwick leading them both.
Warwick, Gugelmin in the middle, and behind them, Ayrton Senna, who by now is racing strictly for pride.
And also incredibly fast. He's turning into very, very fast lap times. No, can't do that time. Going to turn 1. He's already had one fracas at turn 1 today. Doesn't want another one. As Gugelmin actually leaves him through that turn. A long looping turn, taken in 5th gear in these cars, about 135, 140 miles an hour.
This racetrack has been the site of a couple of fairly large accidents. Philippe Streff, as you may know, had a bad one in testing about a week ago. He is now back in a hospital, and his racing career might very well be in jeopardy after a back injury. Terry Boutsen also rode off the brand new Williams in this racetrack in a testing accident. Boutsen now out of the race. He has a sore back and was not expected to be terribly competitive as a result.
Although he did make a great start, was up to 3rd spot there for a little bit, but he was hurting. And of course, he's using last year's car with modified front suspension and of course the new Renault engine because his new car was totally written off and they hadn't got enough to have one each. So Patrese kept his car, which is the new one.
You're We're looking at Riccardo Patrese, who is now the leader as a result of Nigel Mansell's tire stop. But there is yet a stop coming for this man as well. He has not stopped, although virtually all of the other top cars have at this point. So we anticipate that Riccardo Patrese will need to come into the pits very shortly.
If he doesn't, they've got the race in the bag. If he could do another 5 laps, 6 laps, he would be in incredibly strong position, because pretty well everybody else, he might be able to get through them with just the one stop, but everybody else is going to have to make at least another stop, even Nigel, who stopped 2 laps ago.
Riccardo Patrese has had a long and somewhat colorful career in Formula One. On his 177th start today, along the way he has driven for a variety of teams, and at one time he was implicated in the crash in which Ronnie Peterson suffered fatal injuries, and as a result had a hard time with his reputation. Let's go down to John Bizignano.
Stephen Capelli came into the pits. It was a very efficient pit stop. The boys here in blue, as they're called, the Leighton House mechanics, they've been practicing this all weekend long. 6.5 seconds for Ivan Capelli. Right now, looking down the pit road, we still have the Williams cars set up, and McLaren is continuously set up. We don't know why they're using so many tires. They did over 800 miles of testing here before this event. They should have had some clue that their chassis was going to eat their Goodyear tires. Back in.
Well, Goodyear brought some 2,000 tires to this race. We understand Pirelli did about the same, so there is no shortage of tires in the pits, but that second stop for Capelli means that he is really going through them. And this may be the reason.
Well, that's a big blow up there, and a lot of oil on the track. Now then, is Riccardo Patrese going to know about the oil when he arrives there?
Riccardo Patrese is your leader in the Grand Prix of Brazil. We're going to take a quick moment for a timeout, and we'll be back after these messages. Back at Rio de Janeiro, Bob Varsha, David Hobbs, and John Bizignano with you with the Grand Prix of Brazil, and we have a new leader. Alain Prost of France, the 2-time world champion, has passed Riccardo Patrese, and as you can see, he is motoring away. Patrese, having problems, may have overextended those tires.
Probably did overextend the tire life, although on the other hand, he's disappeared from the picture altogether now, and he only passed him half a lap before. Maybe Patrase's got problems that we don't know about, but there you see the new leader. But he did make an incredibly early stop, so Prost has got to make at least one more tire stop.
Once again, we're working with Brazilian television, so we can't always point the cameras in the direction that we would like to. But there you see Patrese at the back of the picture, and Alain Prost, looking for his record 36th victory, is out in front. Meanwhile, more action in the pits. One of the marches is there. Could this be Capelli again?
Well, I think Capelli's engine just let go, or an oil line went. He made a tremendous puff of smoke and went past here very slowly. So I think Capelli's race is run. Nigel Mansell just went past Patrese here, so let's look for the pits now, as Patrese is almost bound to pull into the pits this lap.
And he has a ways to go to get there. He's moving very slowly on the back side of the racetrack. He has at least 2 turns and 1 straightaway before he will get to the pit area. Meanwhile, you're watching the professor himself, Alain Prost. Good.
Oh, but you couldn't see that. A great shot there. As he braked to turn into the pit lane, he completely locked up the right front a couple of times. This would indicate that the right front is completely shot, or both front tires are probably completely shot.
Patrese is now down in the pits, and your leader remains Alain Prost. There you see from Patrese's car the problems he was having with cars passing him right and left. Boy, it's hard to catch your breath after the action we've seen thus far here at the Grand Prix of Brazil. Considering we went 5 races last year before we saw a pass for the lead, we've had at least 4 already today here in Brazil.
And you can see from those low shots, when they have that long shot on the ground shot there, you can see all the rolled up rubber that's already assembled at the side of this racetrack. And I mean, they had an army of sweepers out here last night, so we know it started pretty clean, and it's already covered in rolled up rubber.
Speaking of history, we've already mentioned Riccardo Patrase's 177th start. There you see, I believe that's a temperature gauge, 54 degrees on the track surface. Let's do some quick addition, about 130 degrees or so.
142, something, yeah.
Yikes. Meanwhile, this man, Alain Prost, is also in position to make history. He holds the record for victories at 1 Grand Prix. He has won 5 Brazilian GPs. 2 other men have won 5 races. The late Jim Clark won 5 British Grand Prix, and The late Graham Hill won 5 Grand Prix at Monaco. Should Alain Prost win today, he will take over possession of that record as well. Let's go down to John Bisignano.
We have Lee Gogg with us, the International Director for Goodyear Motorsports. Lee, why so many tires here today?
Well, this place is notorious for wear. Absolutely worse than the world. Where our main guys will probably make 2 stops. But Tracy's trying to make it with 1. We may not have to make a tire stop the rest of the year, but this place is so bad, we got to make 2.
It seems like the McLarens have been coming in very early for their 2 tire stops. I know the fuel gets lighter, and therefore the tire wear gets less as the race goes on. But do you really think the McLarens are going to change one more time?
Well, forget about Senna because he had a car problem. He got pinched. Prost came in early. He could almost make it a 1 stop. So if he's going to make 2, lap 10, lap 15 doesn't make any difference. Sooner the better. He's going to have to make 2 stops altogether.
Again, the heat of Brazil and those fast sweeping turns, very tough on the Goodyear tires and the Pirelli tires here in Brazil.
And right now, Alain Prost has got his hands full. Right behind him is the Ferrari of Nigel Mansell. We'll keep tabs on that and tell you what happens when we come back. You're watching the Grand Prix of Brazil on ESPN. Track back to us. On 6 and then track back. I throw to the track back. Back at the Grand Prix of Brazil in Rio de Janeiro, you're watching the lead battle between Frenchmen Alain Prost and Nigel Mansell in the Ferrari. Behind them, Johnny Herbert now in 3rd position. Derek Warwick is 4th, and Alessandro Nannini 5th. Excuse me, let's juggle that as our Olivetti Longines timer changes it. Mansell 2nd, Herbert 3rd, Warwick 4th, Mauricio Gugelmin 5th, and in 6th position, Alessandro Nannini. Great battle up front. That is Alain Prost, the 2-time world champion, winner of 35 Grand Prix races. Behind him, Nigel Mansell.
Now, Alain Prost really has got to be the professor here because he made such an incredibly early first pit stop that he's really got to stretch this 2nd set of tires out before he makes his 2nd stop. So he's going to be very, very careful how he treats that car.
Nigel Mansell on fresher tires. A great battle. Here's the long straightaway. Now here is where Mansell passed Patrese, under braking at the end of the straightaway. Now he tries it to the inside and he'll make it.
Well, so much for the Ferrari lack of power, because that was the Honda V10, the magical Honda new creation that Nigel just passed pretty easily down the back straight there. Pretty impressive.
Once again, here's another look. He went to the outside of Patrese. This time, Mansell tries the inside of Prost.
Now, he may have come onto the corner just a little, come onto the straight just a little bit quicker out of that last north corner, but that was still a pretty impressive display of sheer power down the straight.
Let's give Mansell another call there. In testing his electronically operated semi-automatic gearbox, Mansell got a misshift and absolutely exploded an engine in testing at that very point on the racetrack where he had the confidence in it to keep his foot down and go right past Alain Prost and into the lead. Now that we have a new leader, let's take time out for this quick track fact.
Track Facts are sponsored by USF&G Asset Management, a network to better manage money, people, property, and equipment.
If you remember, the whole purpose of turbocharging in Formula One was to get as much air down into the combustion chamber as possible. Well, turbochargers are long gone, but what has reappeared is the Formula One air box. It's somewhat of a simplistic design. It's an air scoop right on top of the car where you have fresh air and somewhat cooler air than down by the track, and this large scoop that leads right onto the engine's trumpets that will go into the intake manifold. Now, the whole idea is at speed, over 180 miles an hour, which these F1 cars get to in many circuits. That ram air effect actually puts more oxygen into the combustion chamber and therefore a bigger bang. So the Camel Lotus team here, they hope to gain some 5 to 7% in horsepower once over 180 miles an hour. And remember, that's very important because it's on the straightaways that still remains the easiest place to pass.
Back on the racetrack, you're watching Nigel Mansell putting a lap on Christian Danner in the Real.
Danner making his return to Grand Prix racing, which is going to flutter the hearts of many of the ladies out there. And, of course, Christian Danner is the one racing driver here that really looks like a racing driver should look. There we see a great in-car camera shot from Riccardo Patrese, as he is about to put a car past one of the Benettons that look like there, which must, in fact, have moved him up past Nannini, put him into 6th spot.
At the Grand Prix of Brazil, Nigel Mansell remains your leader, but we want to take a moment to remind you of our next event in our ESPN Formula One coverage, the Grand Prix of San Marino from Imola, Italy, Monday night, April 24th, 12 midnight. For you race fans on the East Coast, out west it'll be Sunday night at 9 o'clock. Same day coverage of the San Marino Grand Prix coming your way here on ESPN. Out front, Nigel Mansell leads Frenchman Alain Prost. Derek Warwick is third. Johnny Herbert fourth. Mauricio Gugelmin of Brazil is fifth. And Riccardo Patrese, who led much of this race from the early going, now in 6th position. 34-year-old Nigel Mansell, who says he always wanted to drive for Ferrari, as we watch Mauricio Gugelmin in the March going around Dr. Jonathan Palmer in the all-black Tyrrell. And those two have been going at it for a while around this 3-mile race course, the Autodromo Nelson Piquet. As I mentioned, Nigel says he always wanted to drive for Ferrari, so we asked him what he feels like now that that ambition has been achieved.
In a nutshell, I can answer it this way and say it's great. It's fascinating driving for Ferrari, but obviously my lifelong dream was to get into Formula One and be competitive and win races and go for the championship. Obviously, if I can do the same now, win races and go for the championship with Ferrari, it will be so much better.
Comfortably out front now, Nigel Mansell in the Ferrari.
Very comfortably out the front. He's got nearly a 10-second lead on Alain Prost, his immediate pursuer. But obviously one can't help but be incredibly suspicious of all of Alain Prost's moves on the racetrack. But Nigel Mansell is putting on a tremendous display here this afternoon in this terrific heat in front of this huge crowd. And the Ferrari is really putting out its all and showing very, very commendable reliability at this stage of the race. No problems at all.
It is hard to overstate how surprising it is that the Ferrari is doing well, because it has gotten nothing but neutral, shall we say, reviews in the press. A lot of folks said John Barnard's chassis was too trick, that the electromagnetic semi-automatic gearbox would never work, would never be reliable, that the 12-cylinder engine was down on power, and that Ferrari had really outdone themselves this time and not given Gerhard Berger and new recruit Nigel Mansell the cars that they need. But obviously here in Rio, Nigel Mansell has all that he needs. He leads by a comfortable 9 seconds over Prost.
And pulling away, too, quite substantially. So Nigel Mansell is looking in very, very good shape at the moment. But he will have to make one more tyre stop, at least. And Alain Prost will have to make at least one more tyre stop, which may be why he is going so slowly as we look at him now. There we see a good race in view between Mauricio Gugelmin in the blue March, trying to catch up with Johnny Herbert, brand new in Formula One. Making a lot of ground on brakes there as they go into this last corner. This is the victory curve as they come out of there onto the start-finish straight. Gugelmin obviously determined to do as well as he can in front of his own crowd. Johnny Herbert putting on a great display in the Benetton Ford, leading his teammate Alessandro Nannini, who's got a lot more experience in that car, quite comfortably. Both those cars, of course, are last year's model, last year's engines and last year's cars, specifically for reliability. The new Ford won't be ready till at least Mexico, and they're talking about the new March being ready maybe for Imola.
New cars coming online. Meanwhile, let's run down the top 6 at this point. Nigel Mansell is your leader as we watch Alain Prost, who is in 2nd position. 3rd, Derek Warwick. 4th, Johnny Herbert, the surprising British rookie. 5th, Mauricio Gugelmin, himself in only his 2nd year of Formula One racing. And in 6th position, Riccardo Patrese.
There we see Gugelmin about to try and go by Johnny Herbert. One thing about Johnny Herbert, he had a tremendous crash at Brands Hatch last year, broke both his legs, his feet, his ankles, but he certainly is not showing any signs of it having affected him psychologically at all. Very, very brave young driver still, but hurting just a little bit here on the bumps in Brazil.
As we watch Alain Prost making his way through traffic, he overtakes Satoru Nakajima in the bright yellow Camel Lotus Judd. Meanwhile, we'll take another look at Gugelmin's move on Herbert.
Showing yet again the slipperiness of that March. It was designed and developed last year by a guy called Adrian Newey, who's done a lot of IndyCar work. and it shows that his high-speed track car is very, very slippery and has still got good downforce characteristics.
Meanwhile, Nakajima giving Prost plenty of trouble there as the Frenchman tries to make his way up from second place.
Well, one can't help thinking that Prost's tires, second set of tires, is about ready to give up now because he's done as many laps on his second set as he did on his first set.
We'll have to wait and see if Alain Prost has another tire stop in his future. Nigel Mansell continues to lead. Prost the second, Warwick third, Johnny Herbert fourth, Gugelmin fifth, the Crazy sixth. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the FIA Formula One World Championship. It's the Grand Prix of Brazil, first round of the 1989 series. Speaking of series just underway, the NASCAR Winston Cup scene is heated up. Expectations are high as drivers take to the track Too Tough to Tame in the 89 edition of the Trans-South 500, coming your way live from Darlington, South Carolina. Watch out for Darrell Waltrip, who's already won 2 of the first 3 races this season, the Daytona 500 and the Motorcraft 500. The Trans-South 500 is coming your way Sunday, April 2nd, 12:45 p.m. Eastern Time, live here on ESPN. Meanwhile, here in Rio, the Formula One World Championship is being led by Nigel Mansell. As you take a look there at Alain Prost running in second position, almost a full 20 seconds down to Mansell.
Well, Alain Prost is in fact losing about 3 seconds a lap to Nigel Mansell, and Derek Warwick, who's lying in a third spot, must be thinking all his birthdays have come at once. He's picking up about 2 seconds a lap on Alain Prost, so he's looking to have a good day here.
Alain Prost, whose passion is golf. There were a lot of stories going around before the season began that perhaps Prost would call this his last year. He has vehemently denied them here in Brazil, saying it is absolutely not true as he squeezes by in one of the arrows there.
Eddie Cheever, I think, yeah. Eddie Cheever's not having a good day. He's had a lousy weekend one way or another, although things looked like they'd warmed up for him this morning, or cleared up for him this morning in the morning warm-up. He went quite quickly, but not having a good afternoon and into the pits, in fact.
Behind him, Ayrton Senna comes in for yet another pit stop. Meanwhile, there's Derek Warwick with the number 9 arrows. And a lot of the problems that Eddie is having, we'll go down to John Bisognano first.
Almost a rear-end accident here as the McLaren of Senna pulled out right into almost Johnny Herbert. They only missed each other by inches. He turned about there with the McLaren mechanic in between them. Also, Derek Warwick, he was in third place, and now he is stuck in these pits. For sure, his highest running in many, many years since he has been with Renault. They are down there working feverishly, trying to get that engine started. It's the Ford engine, and he is out of there with a push and a little bit of air up the old bum. But the pit stops here. We have the Ferrari coming in. This looks more like a NASCAR pit under a yellow than it does Formula One, almost off the track. Sorry, get correct. That was not a Ferrari. It was Andrea Di Cesare. But the pits down here are hot and furious. The Ferrari is going to try and make it 1 or possibly 2 more laps before they change tires.
All right, John, and we'll come back to you when that happens. Incidentally, John's brother, Jim Bisognano, celebrates his 50th birthday today on Easter Sunday, and we'd like to wish him a happy birthday. As we watch Alain Prost go around, we should all point out it's the 50th anniversary of Babe's Restaurant in Des Moines, Iowa, owned by the father of both John and Jim Bisognano, so all the folks in Babe's have one. Around for the house, and make sure you charge John.
Send the bill to John. Yeah, there we see Alain Prost losing, like I say, about 2 seconds left. And that looks like Mauricio Gugelmin going to the pits here for his second tire stop. 37 laps, he should be okay. 38 laps.
John Bisognano is going to need a traffic cop down there before too long. Let's go back down to him now.
Well, once again, it is fast and furious. The problem is this pit lane is a bit narrow. We have the Brazilian PK in, and my lord, he almost hit the tire. Set up the Nichols Gugelmin right out in front of one of the Lolas. I'll tell you, I'm glad I'm well back over the pit rail here, because these boys are not used to having so many pit stops at the same time. I think most of the top teams now have changed twice, and with the lighter fuel load, we show 23 laps to go, but the temperature is now at 41 degrees. That's over 110 degrees Fahrenheit.
It has been a hot battle here in more ways than one in Brazil. You see cars.
Oh!
On the racetrack, and we've got a couple of cars contact, and they've gone off down at the end of the straightaway. You watch Alain Prost continue. I hope our Brazilian cameras will shortly pick up the incident at the end of the long back straightaway. Two cars have come together and are now buried in the sandpit.
Bernd Schneider and Eddie Cheever, and it really wasn't. Bernd Schneider was on the inside, put his brakes on as we see him walking across the sand trap there, which did its job admirably, kept him out of the guardrail, and he put his brakes on and the right front wheel came off the car, which obviously made him turn right into Eddie Cheever.
But quickly he goes over to make sure Eddie realizes that, and they walk off arm in arm. Nice picture. That has to be a close moment. Now Eddie's got a problem. If anything, I think
one of the things about Eddie Cheever is he has a tremendous difficulty getting in and out of that car. It is very, very tight fit. And I would imagine that he's pretty exhausted. Maybe his legs have gone completely numb.
He may be overcome. Indeed, Eddie Cheever had a tough time passing the FIA required emergency escape drill, under which a driver has to be able to get out of his car in 5 seconds unaided. Eddie had a problem with that because he runs about 6 feet 2 inches tall, and these cars are very, very narrow. He actually has to twist sideways to pry himself out of the car.
He has to twist sideways to get in as well, which is really, you know, he has to twist and slide himself in and has a hell of a job to get in and out. And when he's in, boy, he's really in.
Well, good to see as Alain Prost passes the tire track set up by Cheever and Bernd Schneider, who are now out of the race. And that has to give FISA some pause if numb legs because of the tight driver cockpit can cause accidents.
I think there should be a rule, quite honestly, giving some sort of a cockpit dimension, because if there isn't, these designers are just so paranoid about frontal area that they're just making these cars smaller and smaller and smaller. And it's going to be a requirement soon that you're a midget to drive one in the first place. And failing that, I mean, you're just going to be jammed tight into the car, which obviously is dangerous. But Schneider there, I just happened to be looking out of the window, and boy, I mean, he just put the brakes on, the right front wheel became completely detached from the car.
Close moment. We are sitting high above a grandstand packed with, I would guess, on the order of 50,000 Brazilians, with large columns a la Cleveland Stadium in Cleveland, Ohio, that make it a little bit difficult to see in one direction or the other.
Well, not only, of course, there are a bunch of Brazilians in here, that Grand Prix tours from the old USA, from Los Angeles, have got a party of about 40 people here, and no doubt they're enjoying that certain aroma of Brazilian perspiration as Nigel Mansell puts a lap on the LaRousse Camels car of Philippe Alliot, which must be at least 2 laps down now. That probably makes it 3 laps down.
Once again, back in the pits, you see one of the Benetton cars. I believe that's Nannini. I see a silver helmet. And let's go down to John.
That was Mr. Nannini's third stop. Alessandro Nannini's third stop this Grand Prix. Again, it's the sweeping left-right turns that are taken at very high speeds, above 180 miles an hour. David, what is it like to be going into a 180-mile-an-hour sweeper and find out that your tires are starting to go away from you?
Well, that's obviously what Patrese found earlier on, John, because when he pulled into the pits, he could hardly stop the car from a relatively low speed without getting tremendous lockup from the tires. They just go so squishy that you just have no grip at all. They go from super grip to no grip, and it's one of those spooky feelings, and Patrese was one of those guys that probably hung on just a little bit too long, although now he's worked his way up to 3rd spot again.
We are working lap number 42, and Nigel Mansell remains your leader. It has been since 1979 since a V12 engine won a Grand Prix. We're not trying to put the knock right now on Nigel, but should he go on, it will have been 10 years since a V12 engine won a Formula One race. Mansell remains in the lead, and we'll be back to see how he does when we return to Rio. At Rio, and don't forget, coming your way, legendary motorcycle daredevil, or soon to be a legend, Robbie Knievel, son of Evel Knievel, will attempt to jump the fountains at Caesars Palace in Las Vegas. It's a live pay-per-view event coming your way Friday, April 14th. No one has done it before. Robbie will try it. Don't forget to contact your local cable system and look for this live pay-per-view spectacular April 14th.
Well, after his last pit stop, young Derek Warwick, with his new tires, has got himself really wound up. Lost half his fuel load by now, so the car's getting a bit lighter. He's just turned in a lap at 1:33.6, which is the fastest lap of this race so far.
And you saw Nigel Mansell getting a little squirrely there. I think his tires may be turning to rock once again.
Well, he's done 23 laps on this set of tires, and he only did 17 on his first set.
We have now had a new fast lap. Alessandro Nannini has taken over those honors. If you watch action there between Olivier Griard in one of the Ligers, he is trailing that black Tyrrell being driven by Michele Alboreto, who used to hold Nigel Mansell's seat at Ferrari.
And now seems to be holding up Olivier Griard. This is Griard's first Grand Prix. Comes out of the ranks of Formula 3000 Europe and did extremely well. Qualified quite well in the race, whereas his teammate René Arnoux failed to make the cut. So obviously a bright future for this young Frenchman.
Griard qualified 22nd. And right now, he's trying to get by Michele Alboreto, who has had a very frustrating last couple of seasons.
Now, they ask in America, do those Formula One guys use the draft? Well, I'd say that was using the draft.
Meanwhile, here is a look at Riccardo Patrese. Recall that he led this race from the get-go, led of the last 14 laps, if I'm correct, before being passed. He had a long tire stop, and he's been trying to work his way back through the field, presently shown in third position.
And he is 8 seconds behind Alain Prost, so he has made up a lot of ground on Alain Prost in the last few laps. Prost's tires now must be getting very second-hand, because he only did 14 laps on his first set and has done nearly 30 on his second.
Nigel Mansell continues to lead. Alain Prost running in second position, 25 seconds down. Now we go inside the car of Riccardo Patrese. All of the top teams will be using in-car cameras this year. The rest will carry 5 kilos of weight to make up the difference. Nigel Mansell is now down in the pits. The leader is in the pits. And let's go down to John.
And looking a bit frustrated about something. They had the wheel off. They had the steering wheel off. Now,
They're changing. They are changing steering wheels in the Ferrari. We got the steering wheel. For the automatic gearbox. They were down here for 13.7 seconds by our watch. He did put on some new tires, but the reason for the stop, and they had the steering wheel out for 2 laps previous, was to change the steering wheel. And Nigel actually had the old steering wheel off before he stopped the car. But remember, that is where the switch is located for him to shift gears.
Thank you, John. Once more, we're back with Riccardo Patrese. As John mentioned, the switches to go up and down are under the driver's right and left hands on the steering wheel. And Mansell said that caused him problems when he was in tight turns and he'd cross his arms. He'd forget which hand he was supposed to use to go up or down on the gearbox.
Which side are we going now? I can well imagine what it's like, too.
And there you see Mansell just ahead of Riccardo Patrese. So suddenly Alain Prost is back out front. We make Mansell second, Patrese third. And Mansell may have to hold off the challenge of his former teammate with the Williams team, this man, Riccardo Patrese of Italy.
Yeah, so we've got Prost leading now, and Patrese second, and Mansell third. Now, the thing is, that even if Alain Prost makes a stop now, they're very close behind him. Mansell's only just about a second behind him. So we'll almost certainly get the lead back as soon as Prost stops.
Before we leave the subject of that semi-automatic Ferrari gearbox, we'd like to hear from Nigel Mansell. And we asked him to tell us about the future of this high-tech Ferrari system.
Yeah, I like it when it works. Is it an advantage when it works? That remains to be seen in a race condition, but I mean, we do have a few problems with it presently. But the golf's coming on.
More pit action. Here's John Bisignano.
We have one of the Williams in the car, Riccardo Patrese, coming in. Of course, he is one of the contenders from the very start of this race, all weekend long. We had it at the fastest pit stop all weekend long, 5.4 seconds for the Williams boys.
That's a bit more like it. That's a Formula One pit stop.
Well, they're having plenty of practice. They're getting better as the afternoon goes on.
Keep in mind that Formula One teams have about 16 guys who get out there to change tires, a far cry from the 6 we see in NASCAR racing. And getting back to what Nigel Mansell just had to say, I think things are going quite well for him. Nobody expected Ferrari to challenge here today at the Grand Prix of Brazil in Rio. Nigel Mansell is presently, by our calculations, in second position. There, I believe, is your leader, Alain Prost, and the 3 top runners are very close together.
Well, they certainly are, because Patrese dropped back a little bit after that pit stop, but when he comes out, like Nigel Mansell, he'll have brand new rubber. Alan Prost is getting certainly long in the tooth now.
Excuse me, that's not Mansell behind him. I believe that's the Dallara of Andrea De Cesaris.
And that's Mansell right behind him.
Mansell.
Yeah. Oh, that'll be nice for Nigel. Got to get round Andrea De Cesaris.
Prost is first. De Cesaris, who is not among the top runners, is sandwiched between Prost and Nigel Mansell, who swings out to the left. And he'll take De Cesaris easily.
Nigel putting the brightness on De Cesaris, and he went by there.
This is a very bumpy circuit, as you've seen from the in-car cameras thus far. The drivers really have to work to keep these things going straight, and under acceleration in a turn, steering is really pretty approximate. David, tell me a little bit about that Ferrari gearbox. What do you think the future of that kind of a system is?
Well, obviously, as the engine power band gets narrower and narrower, an automatic gearbox becomes a very important part of the equation, because by having a constant power upshift, you can in fact make the engine power band narrower, which gives you more ultimate power.
And right now, we'll see whether Nigel Mansell has the power to make a pass on leader Alain Prost. We've already seen Mansell make one pass here of Prost. And once again, he pulls to the inside. He's making it look easy. The Englishman, Nigel Mansell, 34 years of age, father of 3 children, and a member of the police force at his home in the Isle of Man. I'd like to be pulled over by a Formula One driver sometime.
Well, having shaken hands with him again this morning, I'd forgotten just what an iron grip he's got, so you wouldn't want his hand on your collar, I'll tell you that.
Those are the fingers you want when you're shifting your transmission on the steering wheel. Nigel Mansell pulled into the pits moments ago to have that wheel changed. We don't know whether it was because the system was acting up, but at this moment...
And De Cesaris has got around Alan Prost as well, so Prost must be in severe trouble.
Tell me a little about pit stop strategy here, David. Does Prost make another lap because the pit may not be ready for him?
I guess he's trying to string this out. He only wants to make one more stop, and it seems incredible to me, because he could have made a stop a long time ago, because there's actually only 13 more laps to go. I don't know why he doesn't stop and get some new tyres on, because there's no way that Nigel's tyres are going to go off enough between now and the end of the race to give Prost a chance to catch him up on the tyres he's got.
Well, Nigel Mansell has once again reassumed the lead. He is in first. Alain Prost runs second. Mauricio Gugelmin, the Brazilian, up to third. Johnny Herbert fourth. Ricardo Patrese is fifth. Derek Warwick is sixth, and we'll be back in a moment. Back in Rio, where you're watching second-place runner Alain Prost of France. We have had at least 7 passes for the lead here in the Grand Prix of Brazil. Pretty stunning when you consider all of the front running done by the Marlboro McLarens last year. But right now, the best Marlboro McLaren is Prost in second place. Ayrton Senna came together with Ferrari's Gerhard Berger on the very first turn of the first race of the year. Berger is out of the race. Senna dropped well back in the pack. And right now, Alain Prost carries the colors of the McLaren team.
It's a shame, because Senna's been going consistently quick all afternoon, and obviously would have been a very, very strong factor in this race. Mauricio Gugelmin, who we see here, has finally got around Michele Alboreto after lots and lots of trying, and is rocketed away from Alboreto. He's only passed him half a lap ago, and has moved straight up into third spot.
And the next man in front of him, Alain Prost. And before the commercial break, we speculated about the quality of Prost's tires. He may have to deal with this Brazilian in a moment.
The March, Judd engine March, has always had a good history of tyre wear, and Mauricio's made 2 stops already, so he's obviously hoping to go to the end now on the set of tyres that he's got.
A very, very young team is March. Only the 3rd season for the team, 3rd season for driver Ivan Capelli, 2nd season for this man, Mauricio Gugelmin, a close friend of Ayrton Senna's.
And that right behind him is the Patrese car, also on relatively new tyres, so no doubt. In fact, Patrese just did the fastest lap of the race down into the 132 bracket, which is almost equal to the lap record. There we see the in-car camera. There's Mauricio Gugelmin just up in front going into turn 1. As Patrese swings in there, you can see just how hard these cars are taking this. You can see his arms and the whole car bouncing around. I tell you, an hour and a half of that's about as much as you want to put up with.
Let's listen as well.
That left-hander long left-hander as we come onto the back straight. See Petresi use that corner well. The Renault engine's obviously one of the more powerful engines here, so he'll probably make a bit of ground on Gugelmin as they go down the straight, especially, of course, as he's using a slipstream as well.
Gugelmin runs third.
Now, through that long corner, you see how that March car actually pulls away from the Williams car. The Marches are very, very good on long, fast corners. Again, that IndyCar experience in that chassis design showing.
Once more, Riccardo Patrese in fourth place, carrying our in-car camera, sneaks up on Mauricio Gugelmin.
See the bumps there. Look at his arm going there. Tonight, he'll have sore spots all over that elbow, as with all the other drivers.
Keep in mind, he's been doing this for about an hour and 25 minutes at this point. And that gives you some idea of just how athletic these drivers really are.
You've got to remember, the two outside is about 103, 102. Inside the cockpit there is probably 115, 120. Not making much ground on Mauricio, though. Just about holding his own. Gugelmin driving a terrific race here. As so often happens, these drivers in front of their home crowds tend to put on some great displays.
And there you see the gap from Frost in second place to the left of your picture to Gugelmin to the right. And look at the way they're closing the gap on second place Prost.
I really, for the life of me, don't know why Prost stayed out. Now, this is probably where Patrese will get Gugelmin. Prost held Gugelmin up just slightly there. And Patrese has undoubtedly got more horsepower than the March.
But that certainly complicates the pass for Patrese, having two cars in front of him instead of one. And
they won't be able to do it this time.
So Alain Prost must now hold off both Mauricio Gugelmin and Riccardo Patrese. Look at him go.
I think the race so far has been remarkable for its lack of attrition, considering all the new engines and cars out here, which bodes extremely well for later on in the season. A little bit of rubber stuck on the lens of the camera there. And Patrese goes down the inside of Gugelmin. Oh, and pushes Gugelmin up on the curb. Boy, oh boy, that was a bit hairy.
That's one way to make a pass, and Patrese has suffered for it. Gugelmin goes back into third place, and Patrese may have damaged his car in that contact. He's not in the picture.
Patrese has...
And he'll creep to a stop on the start-finish straightaway. What a heartbreak for Riccardo Patrese in his record-setting 177th Formula One start. He has lost a contact fight with Brazilian Mauricio Gugelmin. The crowd roars its support of their youngest Formula One hero. And meanwhile, the camera records the end of Riccardo Patrese's attempt to win his third Grand Prix after having driven more than any other man in history. At this point, then, we'll take a timeout. Nigel Mansell continues to lead. Prost secure in second, but this man, Mauricio Gugelmin, aims to change that in a moment. Back at Rio, we're watching the battle for second place. Alain Prost just going out of your picture. In between is the Real of Christian Danner, and then this man, Mauricio Gugelmin of Brazil. Quickly, he disposes of Filipe Alliot in the 12-cylinder Lamborghini Lola chassis. And as Mauricio continues on his way, let's take a moment to go down to John Visignano in the pit.
We're with Eddie Cheever, the only American in this Brazilian Grand Prix. Eddie, it looked like a frightening moment at the end of this 180-mile-an-hour straightaway. What happened?
I think Snyder had a front suspension failure. That's what I presume happened. That's what he tried to tell me with his hands. He tried to pass me around the straight, didn't have enough power, pulled in, I turned in, and he whacked me in the back. When he hit me, I hit the back of my head against the monocoque between the heat and the fact that I'm really uncomfortable in the car. I was on the verge. You'd have just had to push me out of falling over.
How bad is the car, and how bad is his car?
Well, I don't think his car's done any better, but I think mine's all right.
And how bad is your head now? I mean, you were standing out here in the sun. Should you not be someplace else in the shade?
No, all I needed was a bit of water. That was all.
Hey, John, just tell Eddie Cheever that, in fact, his wheel did come off the car. I just happened to be looking out the window, and Schneider's wheel parted company from the car when he put the brakes on.
Well, I'm sure he'll be glad to hear that. This camaraderie in the first in the first few races, it's very important because you do not like to have instances happen that bleed their way through to the entire season. We'll certainly pass that along.
And meanwhile, we've had a pass for the lead on the far side of the racetrack while his countrymen are watching Mauricio Gugelmin. Nigel Mansell just rocketed past Alain Prost back into the lead, but Prost quickly comes back. This is a fight we need to watch. Excuse me, that was Senna. I'm getting lost among my Marlboro McLarens here. Mansell passed Senna. Meanwhile, Prost has his hands full with Gugelmin on the other side of the racetrack. The crowd is absolutely wild here about their Brazilian heroes, and they desperately want to see Gugelmin back in the race. They'll take anything that their world champion Ayrton Senna will give them at this point.
And there we see Alain Prost being very closely followed now by Mauricio Gugelmin, who could move into second spot any second now, which would be great for the crowd. They went berserk when Senna passed Mansell, and of course he's only 3 laps down.
You're watching the battle for second place. That is Gugelmin. Just ahead of him in the red and white car is Alain Prost. Nigel Mansell leads. Alain Prost is second. Gugelmin is third at this point. Johnny Herbert about 2 seconds back in fourth place. Fifth is Derek Warwick, about another 12 seconds in the rear. Sixth, Alessandro Nannini, 2 seconds behind Warwick. We expected competition in Formula One this year, and we're certainly getting it. Alain Prost with Mauricio Gugelmin all over him, and just behind rookie Johnny Herbert trying to get into the fight. Keep in mind that Herbert, after a terrible accident in October of last year at Brands Hatch, England, has very tender and sore feet that were surgically reconstructed. He doesn't walk around the garages. He rides a bicycle. But boy, can he drive. And at any moment, he'll be looking for a piece of this man, Gugelmin, in third position. There you see the 3 runners battling for second.
Crowd going absolutely mad as Ayrton Senna takes a lap back off the leader, which only makes him 2 laps behind.
And meanwhile, another Brazilian's in the middle of this one. Gugelmin crossed out the bottom of your picture. There goes Mauricio, a close friend of Senna's. 2 young race drivers learning from the master out ahead of them.
Boy, you've got to think that Alain Prost knows something we don't know. I can't believe he changed his tires on lap 14. Here we are on lap 55, and he's still got the second set on.
Well, you said at the top of the show, or at the beginning of the race, David, that no one's better at preserving his tires than Prost.
But he made that incredible early stop, which, boy, I don't know. Like I say, maybe he knows something we don't know, because he's got a lot of ground to make up on Nigel. Whoa! This is getting a tight battle now, because Prost is no doubt holding up Gugelmin a bit, which of course is putting him back into the clutches of Johnny Herbert.
And now Prost quickly opens up a lead. I wonder if perhaps Gugelmin missed a shift or something there. Herbert all over Gugelmin, who now can't worry about Prost because he's got young Herbert right behind him. Meanwhile, Ricardo Patrese, his fast lap before he dropped out of the race, broke the lap record. And as this battle has now stabilized between Alain Prost and this man, Mauricio Gugelmin, we'll take a timeout and come on back. You're watching the Grand Prix of Brazil on ESPN. Welcome back to the Autodromo Nelson Piquet in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, the Formula One Grand Prix of Brazil. Bob Barsha, David Hobbs, and John Bisignano with you. You're watching the battle for second place. As the crowd comes to its feet, some 95,000 fans here in 105-degree temperatures in Brazil to watch this man, Brazilian Mauricio Gugelmin, do battle with Alain Prost. Your leader is Nigel Mansell in the Ferrari, a story unto himself at this point. No one expected Ferrari to do well. At this point, he leads by 9 seconds over this battle, which contains Alain Prost, behind him the aqua color of Mauricio Gugelmin, right behind him the green Benetton Ford of Grand Prix rookie Johnny Herbert of Great Britain.
And not so far behind them is Derek Warwick, also of Britain, in the first of the Arrows cars, which have put on a great display this afternoon. And he, in turn, is being harried by the second Benetton Ford car of Alessandro Nannini, who must be starting to worry just a little bit about his new teammate.
Well, drift a little further back in the pack. In 7th is Andrea De Cesaris, who was a lap down. 8th, Jonathan Palmer in the Tyrrell. Satoru Nakajima has Lotus's colors flying, a lap down in 9th. 10th, Olivier Griard, another rookie. Then 2 laps down in 11th, Michele Alboreto with the Tyrrell. Ayrton Senna is now just 2 laps down, having passed Nigel Mansell, the leader. In 13th place, Philippe Alliot of France, 3 laps behind, followed by Ricardo Patrese, 4 laps, and now out of the race, and Christian Danner in the Real in 15th and the final position on the racetrack.
Now look at that little frog. Old Alan Prost has pulled up. He's pulling away from Gugelmin here, or giving him a hard run for his money, and is closing the gap on the leader, Nigel Mansell. But he's only got 5 laps left to do it. And I certainly wouldn't say that he can't.
I can't believe he doesn't hit you with one of his golf clubs every time he finds out you call him a frog, David.
Oh, the frog with a long nose then.
5 laps remain in this opening round of the FIA World Championship, the Formula One season here on ESPN. Alain Prost now opens up a bit of a gap over Gugelmin.
The power of that Honda V10 really showing itself as they come down this 2,500-foot back straightaway here, getting up to speeds of about 180 miles an hour, just a tad off what they were doing a couple of years ago when the turbos were unrestricted and they were getting close to 200 miles an hour down this straight. But even so, they're still lapping quicker now than they were then.
The march of technology in Formula One continues. Alain Prost said that it took a little getting used to driving the new normally aspirated engines. All 35 of his Formula One victories have come in turbocharged cars. He said the first time he drove his new normally aspirated Honda, he spun it 2 times because he wasn't used to the throttle reaction that he got.
Every time you touch the gas, something happens, whereas in a turbocharged car, there's always just a little bit of lag or a soft application of power, at least to start with.
I know you're very proud of all the British drivers in the race, including this one, Nigel Mansell, driving for Ferrari in the lead, David. You'll also be happy to know that Mauricio Gugelmin, the Brazilian, lives in Great Britain.
He certainly does. He lives at Esher, I believe. It's a very, very smart suburb of London. People like Ron Dennis live there and all those other high rollers.
In the pits there, you got a quick look at Nigel Mansell's wife, Roseanne, mother of his 3 children, who is with him. She doesn't often come to the races, but she may become his good luck charm today. After a frustrating season last year, his last with the Williams team using Judd engines, and a much speculated about move to Ferrari, Nigel Mansell looks to be ready to claim his 14th career Grand Prix victory and an early lead in the Formula One World Championship for 1989.
Well, I think even Nigel Mansell would have to admit that even he is probably pretty surprised that he's hung in there so long and so competitively in this extremely hot and hard Brazilian Grand Prix. He was not looking forward to it, particularly at lunchtime, but boy, the car has really come to life.
Ask him about it now. I bet he loves it. Let's go down to the pits right now as we watch Mauricio Gugelmin on the racetrack. John Bizignano is standing by with Ricardo Patrese.
Ricardo Patrese, one of your best weekends in your career. On lap 47, you set a new track record here. But what finally put you out of the Brazilian Grand Prix? What went wrong?
We had an electrical failure in the engine, I think, because the engine just died. And unfortunately, we lost a good place here.
The Williams package seems extremely strong. Engine, chassis, aerodynamics, everything. Did you feel you had the best car on this circuit?
I think we had a very good car. I don't know if it was the best. Ferrari was going very well too at the beginning, but I think that we proved that we are there to be protagonists on this season. Yes.
Very good, Ricardo. Best of luck in San Marino.
Well, I guess I was wrong. There was no contact between the 2 cars. Ricardo Patrese simply had the engine going away, which ends a valiant race for him here in the Grand Prix of Brazil. Nigel Mansell, the man in the center of your screen as we look down from high overhead in a helicopter above Rio de Janeiro, seems to be on his way to a great season-opening victory in a brand-new race car with a brand-new Ferrari V12 engine.
Well, obviously, you could never take it away from John Barnard. He was the man that finally put McLaren on the road to success back a few years ago and penned their very, very successful cars. He got taken away by Ferrari 2 years ago. Wasn't having much luck with them last year. The cars were not showing any form at all, but this new 640 really looks like a good package. It does handle extremely well. It's just that the reliability of the gearbox is very suspect to start with, but boy, it certainly hasn't been, even if if it breaks right now. This was a tremendous race test.
And in a way, it's certainly vindication for John Barnard, who has come under a lot of criticism from the Italian press about running the Ferrari racing team from his base in Great Britain. A lot of them said his new car was too radical, too complicated, too outre, and that it would never work in the heat of Formula One battle.
Well, now he'll be a hero in Italy.
And his contract is up at the end of the year, too, so I suppose that'll give him a nice boost.
Look, more money for John. Did you see that rubber lying on the track there? You can see how much wear these guys have had, because most of it's spread around on this track.
We're watching history in more ways than one. The turbocharger's gone. Normally aspirated engines are the rule in Formula One now, and it's been 10 years since a V12 Atmo, as they're known, has won a Grand Prix race. The last win for an atmospheric car of any alignment was Michele Alboreto in Detroit back in 1983. There are a lot of new faces in Formula One you'll be seeing on ESPN this year. By my unofficial count, 19 of the record 31 drivers entered in the series this year are with new teams or have never visited a Formula One race at all. So we'll be bringing you some new faces this year.
And we're not seeing all of them today, but I know we will do as the future unfolds. We'll certainly see the drivers from the Onyx team. That's Stefan Johansson, of course, familiar to most viewers, and a new face to them, Bertrand Gachot. I'm sure they'll get in. It's a wonderful car. It just didn't make the cut here.
14 cars remain active on the racetrack, and that in itself is an achievement. Only 9 finished last year, as 1 lap remains for Nigel Mansell, who is probably gripping that brand new steering wheel for all he's worth.
There you see that rubber on the track as Nigel wends his way around here on the last lap. A terrifically hot afternoon. These guys will be very, very glad when this race is all over.
Once more down the long back straightaway for Nigel Mansell. And at this point, with a 9.5-second lead over Alain Prost, Mauricio Gugelmin 10 seconds behind, Johnny Herbert 12 back, Derek Warwick in 5th, 20 back, 21 seconds to Alessandro Nannini in 6th position. Here he is on the straightaway, Nigel Mansell, who a lot of people were discounting. In fact, I'm sorry to say all of us, when we review Pick 6 at the end of this show, we're all going to have to admit that we didn't think that a Ferrari, let alone a Ferrari of the new recruit to the team, Nigel Mansell, could win the race.
And of course his teammate Berger and Ayrton Senna again are recipients of that age-old prize, but you cannot win a motor race at the first corner of the first lap.
And now we'll be left to speculate what will happen when both Ferraris are healthy in the race. Had Berger still been out there, we might have in fact seen a Ferrari finish that would have warmed the heart of the late Enzo Ferrari. Nigel Mansell now passes the pit entrance. He has but one more turn before the checkered flag waves for the 14th time in his career. Some maniac runs across the racetrack ahead of him, and there is the flag. Nigel Mansell, the winner of the opening event of the 1989 Formula One World Championship, the Grand Prix of Brazil. Finishing in second, unofficially, Alain Prost, whom you see slowing in the white and red car at the middle of your screen. Mauricio Gugelmin finishes third. Johnny Herbert with an outstanding debut in Formula One, 4th place for Benetton. Derek Warwick with the new arrows finishes 5th. And in 6th place, Alessandro Nannini of Italy in the 2nd Benetton car. Quite a day, David.
Well, it certainly was. Alessandro Nannini, I was doing the terrible thing there, looking out of the window, not watching the monitor, and Nannini and Warwick had an absolutely incredible last lap, but Warwick managed to hold him off. But I should think Nannini is mouthing all sorts of Italian swearing at the moment. A tremendous race, which portends some great racing to come, because if the Ferrari is that competitive, the Honda engine is obviously extremely strong from the performance that Senna put up, and obviously Alain Prost during the race itself. And the Marchers have got their new engine coming. The Benettons have got a new engine coming. The Warwick car went extremely well, the arrows, and obviously this is going to be a very, very, very close season indeed.
April 24th at midnight Eastern Time, you'll see the Grand Prix of San Marino. We told you at the top of the show things would be wild again. Things are indeed wild again in Formula One. We'll be right back. From high above the FISA impound at the Autodromo Nelson Piquet in Rio de Janeiro, and one happy celebrant, Nigel Mansell is the winner of the Grand Prix of Brazil. And what a moment it must be for the 34-year-old Englishman. As you see, Ayrton Senna, who has had a most frustrating day, a collision with Gerhard Berger on the very first turn, wound up sending him 3 laps in arrears. He was able to get 1 back. That was all. In fact, the Brazilian hero of the day, Mauricio Gugelmin, and we'll run down the unofficial standings for you. First place, Mansell for Ferrari. Second place, Alain Prost in the McLaren. Third, Gugelmin in the March. Fourth, Johnny Herbert making a spectacular rookie debut for Benetton. In fifth, Derek Warwick with USF&G Arrows. And in sixth place, Alessandro Nannini in the second team Benetton. So our points after this first round of the Formula One season: Mansell with 9, Prost 6, Gugelmin 4, Herbert 3, 2 for Derek Warwick, and Alessandro Nannini with 1. As you see, wife Roseanne welcoming Nigel Mansell, a happy man, to the victory podium. Checking our pick 6, we have to admit, David, that our man on pit road, although he couldn't see the race, certainly saw it clearly ahead of time. David, 3 points. Not a great effort on your part. I should point out that the way we're doing it this year, if you get a driver correctly in the top 6, you get 1 point. If you pick his actual position, you get 2 points. David comes up with 3. Let's go down to our winner this week, John.
Well, I just have to say that true experience and talent and an awful lot of expertise finally came through here in Brazil. I'm proud to accept this award.
Thank you. That's entirely enough out of you, John. And I will accept my 3 points. I ought to get extra credit because I have not been here before. You guys know these people much better than I do. Nevertheless, a very happy Nigel Mansell now cools off in victory lane. We'll be back to wrap up the Grand Prix of Brazil from Rio in a moment. Welcome back to the Autodromo Nelson Piquet in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, where round 1 of the Formula One World Championship for 1989 has been all that we expected and more. There was, in fact, a Brazilian on the podium at the end, but it was not the national hero and 1988 world champion Ayrton Senna. His collision with the Ferrari of Gerhard Berger on the first turn of the first lap dropped Senna back, knocked Berger out, and Mauricio Gugelmin came through to take 3rd place for the March team. Alain Prost finishes 2nd in the McLaren Honda that was expected to dominate this race. But the biggest surprise of all, Ferrari, the underrated team from Modena, Italy, came through not with its number 1 driver Gerhard Berger, but with Englishman Nigel Mansell, the newest recruit to the team, perhaps the biggest surprise we've seen in over a year of Formula One here on ESPN. And Mansell spoke with us afterward.
The nice thing is that the car is a very good car, and it's competitive. It was a question if it was reliable. And I must confess that I am pleasantly surprised as much as anybody that it was reliable, so I'm very happy.
Well, certainly Nigel Mansell was no more surprised than Formula One watchers around the world, and particularly those in Ferrari's home country of Italy, where we will be for the next round of the Formula One World Championship, the Grand Prix of San Marino in Imola, coming your way here on ESPN at 12 midnight, Monday, April 24th, 9 o'clock p.m. on the West Coast. For David Hobbs and John Bisignano, I'm Bob Varsha. Ciao for now from Rio.
ESPN Speed World coverage of the Grand Prix of Brazil has been sponsored by Ford and your Ford dealer. Have you driven a Ford lately? By Mobil 1 Synthetic Motor Oil. Mobil 1. Isn't your car worth the extra protection? And by Grand Prix Tours, the official hotel agent for the Phoenix Grand Prix.